Hello, lovely listeners. In this episode, I interview GSPCA manager Steve Byrne about one of their more unusual rescues, a stranded turtle named Bill. I'm Liz. I'm the co-host of the Wild Islands podcast. I'm an oceanographer and conservationist and all-round nature nerd. And today I'm here with Steve, who is the manager, manager of the GSPCA. So Steve, can you tell me a little bit about what you do here at the GSPCA?
So GSPCA will celebrate 150 years of history this year, and we're an animal welfare organisation that 150 years ago were founded to help make a difference to the island's wildlife and domestic pets and support our community. Back then, the cruelty was more seen with the larger animals, donkeys, horses, being used to cart stuff around the island, which was horrendous. But back then there was actually cruelty going on to seabirds, and that was identified with caring, kind islanders that thought we need to have an organisation that is doing something to stop this and help educate the island. And we're still doing that 150 years on.
That's incredible, because if I look back at the very oldest bird records, they usually are Dr. So-and-so shot a sea eagle over Herm, and that's how these birds were identified. And I hadn't realised the GSPCA was even older than that.
Yes, yeah. It's the RSPCA was the first ever animal welfare organisation, and I used to work for them in the UK for many years, and they were set up in 1824, before there were even charities helping children, before there was a police force in the UK, and they had officers going out investigating cruelty, and in 1840, Queen Victoria given them the royal patronage, and what you saw then was very quickly charities popping up all over the world. Jersey beat us by a couple of years, but we beat them in lots of other things, because we can do the seals and we can do all sorts of creatures that sadly they're unable to do, but they operate in a slightly different way. They have more veterinary facilities there and help islanders in slightly different ways, but we both do tremendous work here in the Channel Islands and try and work together when we can.
Yeah, actually, I would just jump on that and say that looking at it from a third sector perspective, we talk more and more about the Channel Islands working together, and it's great to see that the JSPCA and the GSPCA have already been sort of leading the way. I've seen on Facebook that all of the seal repatriation and vice versa. So it's a great example to the rest of us.
No, we at the heart of the GSPCA, we couldn't be who we are without our community and without learning from others, and we're members of other organisations. So you've got the Association of Guernsey Charities. I'm actually a director for them as well as doing this job. I'm also a trustee for the Association Dog and Cat Homes, which the JSPCA are members of. So we get to meet at different events through the year. For that one, we have a big conference where over 500 people come together from about 160 odd charities that work in animal welfare across the British Isles and Ireland, and those sorts of experiences, sharing that wealth of knowledge, you can put a price on it, because it helps make sure that we're all doing the best we possibly can, and share resources and just share experiences, which we're all trying to do the same thing, maybe in different jurisdictions, but the same problems are there, whether it be wildlife or dogs or cats, and it's something that we all do with a passion. We strive to do the best we can, and it's just wonderful when you're sitting in that room or sitting over the internet, as we often do these days, just to have those conversations and make those friends and just share those experiences.
Yeah, and it really has built out of these origins about animal cruelty in domestic and agricultural use to seabirds, but now you deal with things that are slightly more exotic, and that's the reason why I've sort of ambushed you just after Christmas to talk about it.
Yeah.
So Storm Ciarán did tremendous damage across the Channel Islands, and you had some unexpected rescues.
Yeah, so we've just rescued our fourth seal pup yesterday. So we've got 4 of those now in our care, 2 from Jersey, 2 from Guernsey. But the most exotic of those rescues, I say rescue, the kind couple that found Barnacle Bill, who's a loggerhead turtle, on a beach. They brought it in a shopping bag, and he was about 1,250 grams altogether. But nearly a third of that was barnacles. So this poor little turtle was in freezing cold waters, miles away from home, thousands of miles from where it should really be, and was being dragged back by these wonderful, healthy barnacles, goose barnacles, which were easy to remove once we got the vet on board. And we released those back to the wild. So anybody watching this, they are back where they belong. Unfortunately, Barnacle Bill's a bit more complicated because to try and get these rare species of turtles across borders, you need a lot of CITES paperwork, which is a challenge in itself. The Guernsey authorities were wonderful and got the paperwork to us for this side very, very quickly. But I think Spain has a little bit more to deal with than our little island here. So I know the last turtle that we had, it took months to get the final bit through, and we're just waiting for that now.
So where are you going to repatriate Barnacle Liz Bill to?
So there's a rescue rehab centre based in Gran Canaria. It's actually funded by their government, which is a wonderful and unusual thing for such a rescue to have that sort of funding, because like ourselves, a lot of animal charities are funded by the community and their community resource, whereas the Gran Canaria one, I'm sure they get funding from elsewhere, but they are based on that island in the Canaries, which obviously is a little bit of a challenge to get to from here to there. But I went over with Olivia, who was the last loggerhead that we had, was much, much larger than Barnacle Bill, and myself and Jeff went across. When we were trying to get there originally, we were pricing up, and this is 2015 now, and we were getting quotes of hiring a private jet would cost commercially £25,000 to get there and back, which is rather expensive. A wonderful, kind individual did come forward and said that we could use. It's actually the caring individual was Bruce Dickinson. We didn't hide that. He said you can use my plane at cost. That was still £12,500, and we carried on shopping around. And a friend of mine, Luke Gamble, who some of the viewers might recognise from Sky One, he's a TV vet, and I've met him at different events, and he's always really supportive of us here in Guernsey. He managed to pull some strings, and we did with Arini as well, and we got her there and ourselves and back for less than £2,500 in the end. So,
wow.
We got there and we were able to spend a day there, and we got to do all sorts of really interesting things with the poorly turtles that they had in their care, mostly loggerheads, and it was just a wonderful, albeit 8-hour day that we were there before we had to fly back, but it was great to settle Olivia. And when she was released, which when you put a turtle in a plane, quite often they develop air bubbles in their system, so you can't just release them straight back to the wild. So she had to settle there for a couple of weeks, and about a month later, when they released her, they sent us the footage, and it was incredible to see. The whole beach was rammed with people. They obviously make a big deal of these things. We often quite tend to do it in a quieter sort of, get them into a quiet beach, make sure there's not too many people about, but didn't seem to faze her whatsoever. They obviously do this all the time. The turtle just sort of dragged itself into the waters, and they sent divers with it, and that footage we shared online, and the Dodo website put some short clips together, and one of them had over 1 million viewers in less than 24 hours, which for us is one of the most watched videos of coming out of the shelter, and that went global. So it was a real international story, one that's stayed with us for the rest of our days. And Barnacle Bill now, obviously we've got most of that paperwork. We put an appeal out, and when I was on BBC Radio Guernsey a couple of weeks back, a very lovely lady phoned up and said, we've been my boss heard online that you might be looking for a plane to take a turtle to Gran Canaria, and we went, yes, we are indeed, and they offered to help. So we've got a wonderful, kind individual on island that's got a private jet and is prepared to help take us all that way, and did offer to bring us all the way back, but we'd have to stay there potentially for a week because they'd like to have a holiday there. I mentioned that to the wife, and she wasn't too keen on that.
I mean, I can see both sides of that. So with Olivia, obviously it was, so she was a fully grown leatherback turtle, so
Yeah, loggerhead. Yeah, so
hundreds of kilos.
I can't
She was
remember the weight.
big, wasn't she?
So she was about the size of a pallet.
Yeah.
Albeit she'd lost one of her front flippers. It was
Oh my
only it healed, so it wasn't a fresh injury. She was perfectly able to swim and look after herself. And even the footage of her in the waters in Gran Canaria, it was just stunning to see her move. But whilst she was here, she was really, really poorly. When you compare her to Barnacle Bill, who's a tiny little turtle, he's 12 inches square, or she. We believe it's a she because generally most of them are female.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so we're assuming it's really difficult to sex them until they're much bigger.
Yeah.
Or you obviously take samples and send them off. But the most important thing for us is that Barnacle Bill is healthy and is eating, which is the case. With Barnacle Bill being the size, we've got intensive care units, so we're getting fresh seawater every day. When we had Olivia, though, we had a slightly different challenge because she being the size of a pallet, we didn't really have a heated pool source that big, and Spa Delamere were very kind. They lent us a hot tub. And the States of Guernsey used to deliver seawater by tanker to us, and the Fricke helped with heaters and filters for the pool. And Waitrose row hay stores provided all of the squid that she wanted to eat for free initially by the store, and then the staff carried on paying. She didn't have any from Admiral Park, but she loved the row hay's team because they were very, very kind to us, and it was a real community spirited operation, if you like, getting her all the way from very poorly on the beach, not able to move, to every day increasing the temperature a degree, to eventually into that pool, which we just built a brand new building with a big storeroom, because we're always challenged with stores in shelters, because you have to have all the feed and hay and sawdust and everything else that's required to care for hundreds of animals. So we made this wonderful big store, and within weeks of opening the building, we had a giant hot tub in there with a turtle in it, which wasn't the purpose.
But that goes to show the reality of what you do. You have these wonderful plans, and then nature, you have to adapt. I find it incredible that Barnacle Bill has survived, because this species of turtle is not cold adapted.
No.
So I would have expected it, unfortunately, to be a dead turtle.
Yes.
So the fact that, I'm going to call her she, that she's alive, how difficult was it to gradually warm her up to make sure she didn't die of shock?
Thankfully, it was sort of tail end of November when she was found, so the sea temperatures are still in double figures, it's mid double figures. Where she comes from is only maybe 5 or 6 degrees warmer, so that Gulf Stream, I think, had helped in a great way. But obviously, coming out that Gulf Stream and that Storm Kieran, as you mentioned, was horrendous. And those barnacles on the back, she would have just been really struggling, and getting washed up on a Guernsey beach. That kind family that found her, if they hadn't, then she could have, if she got onto a quieter bay, she might not have survived. But she's one lucky little lady, and incredibly healthy for her ordeal as well, which is wonderful. We just need to get her back where she belongs.
Yeah. So I think it's important to note that if someone finds a turtle, they should contact the GSPCA.
Yeah, but wherever you are, there's always an animal welfare organisation at the end of the phone, and for the bailiwick, where that phone number. Obviously, if animals get washed up on other shores, like whether it be Herm or Jetu or Alderney, even, we're still there to help. Although we might not have a presence physically there, the guys at the shipping and Travel Trident, they're very, very kind to us in helping transport animals where it's needed.
So if you find a turtle on the beach, you should not put it back in the sea.
No, please don't. Call us straight away. As long as it's a turtle. Sometimes it's a rock. We have had some unusual calls over the years, and we've been called out to what we thought was going to be a seal pup, and it's been a duvet on the beach. We've been gone out to pick up hedgehogs, and it's been a pine cone. But if it's a real live animal, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and give us a call. That's what we're here for.
Excellent. So we talked about what Olivia was eating. What is
Yeah.
Bill eating? Is Bill eating squid as well?
Yeah, so sadly, Waitrose don't do squid anymore.
Oh
But
no, they don't, do they?
no, well, I don't. They didn't when we asked a couple of weeks ago. So we are getting squid from mixed fishing. It was been very helpful, and we use a lot of herring and mackerel for the seals. They eat 20 to 30 fish a day each.
Wow.
So we have to pallet it in from a supplier that would supply the zoos and rescues in the UK, from Cornwall. So it's local fish. They just have to go the long way around because the local lads sadly don't catch the quantity that we need on a daily basis. And she's eating parts of those fish as well. So a really healthy diet, lots of fish, lots of squid, and like I said, just doing really, really well, which is lovely to see.
Excellent. So, although you've had really generous individuals offer to contribute to repatriation
Yeah.
costs, obviously this whole rehabilitation is very expensive. So,
Mm-hmm.
if people want to help out,
Yeah.
do you have an appeal or somewhere they can donate?
We have a whole list of wish items. Running a shelter that's so diverse, dealing with every species. We have our biggest appeal, which is the big build appeal. And we're trying to raise somewhere in the region of 3 million. We're about to go to tender to find out how much it's going to cost to build a new wildlife hospital, to build new kennels, and build a new ferret build, because we're going to lose facilities when we knock down buildings to build the wildlife hospital. But the great thing for us in this phase, if you like, is that at last we're going to be able to have a shelter that's designed where one side is where the domestics live and the other side is where the wildlife live, because for the history of the shelter, everything's been a bit of a mix, and there wasn't really some sort of long-term planning going, right, what we really need to do is put those in the quieter side and those in where the public and people walk about. And as of this build project, that will be one of the big wishes that I've always wanted to see happen, and something that'd be a reality. But whether people want to help with regular donations through to buying us gifts, we have an Amazon wish list with the whole list of things which people can buy
Oh, I didn't
locally.
know that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's really useful to know.
yeah, so we're not shy in sharing what we need, because if people don't know what we need, then we can't survive and do what we need to do. So there's everything on there from stainless steel bowls, which are 50 pence each, through to the big bills, through to we need porta cabins to sort of help us deal with the phase of knocking things down and temporary housing things. Like one of the wishes that we've been wanting to do is literally en route. We've got a whole section of hedgehog cages coming, so £16,000 worth of specifically made cages for the hedgehogs, which is going to replace all of our old facility cages, which many of those cages are sort of 15, 20 years old and made of wood and not ideal for cleaning. And they've served the hedgehogs incredibly well for the last decade or more. But with over 700 hedgehogs through the doors every year, the single busiest species animal that we get. We get in total more birds. We get over 3,000 birds sick and injured through the shelter, but hedgehogs is the leading individual species and breed that come through the
I
doors.
had no idea that you were seeing those kinds of numbers.
Yeah.
And with hedgehogs, with our increasingly warmer winters, I
Yeah.
imagine those numbers are only going to continue to rise.
And yeah, like hedgehogs don't hibernate unless it goes below 5
No.
degrees. And we don't have a climate that goes very rare, often under 5 degrees, which means that they're up all through the winter and they carry on breeding through the leaner months, which obviously puts a strain on them and their young. And people find them because we're very lucky that we've got over 500 miles worth of hedging around the island, and that's ideal habitat and motorways for those hedgehogs to travel around the island. And we know that we've released hedgehogs in one end of the island and they've turned up in the other end, and some don't move at all. So there was one that was released just behind the Odeon car park in town, and we had it come back 2 years later and it was pregnant, and that one had literally moved maybe 50 yards from where it was released. So
My goodness.
some I don't know if they catch the bus system, whereas others are more homely creatures. And it's really interesting when we're able to find out sort of these sorts of facts. We try and identify animals if we're able to, whether it be microchipping or birds. The local lads that ring birds often do that for us, and we know that a gull that was cared for at the shelter was released and went all the way to Africa and came all the way back. And when we
Wow.
have the bad snows, they often go to whether it be France or Portugal, and travel great distances and come back. And then there are birds that have never left Lere that we're aware of. They've always been seen on the same wall and the same beach. So really diverse movements of these animals, and it's great to know that some of them are doing very, very well years and years after coming through our care.
So thank you so much for spending so much time with me this morning,
You're
Steve.
welcome.
We are going to go and have a look at Olivia. We didn't, except her name is not Olivia.
Yeah, no.
Her name is Barnacle Bill.
A long way to go.
A long way to go. And we didn't do this interview in the ICU because that would not be appropriate.
No.
With health and safety and animal welfare is at the heart of everything.
Yes.
But now we're going to go and get some behind the scenes sneak footage.
No worries.
So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.